Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Spark channel. I'm thrilled to have you join us today. If you're looking to improve your English listening and speaking skills, build confidence, and speak more fluently, you're in the right place. In today's video, we'll walk through some incredible steps on how to truly master English, from getting comfortable with shadowing and thinking aloud to overcoming mistakes and finally teaching others. Let's unlock your English potential and turn your learning house into a confident speaking home. Ready to spark your journey? Let's get started. Chapter 1: Selina's Journey to London. It was a beautiful summer morning when Selina, a young woman with a deep desire to improve her English, stepped off the airplane at Heathrow Airport, London. Her heart was racing with excitement and anticipation. She had always dreamed of visiting England, and now the opportunity had finally come. She had a goal: to learn English fluently. With a small suitcase in tow, Selina made her way through the bustling airport, her eyes wide with wonder. The sounds of English filled the air, the accent, the pace of speech, the rhythm of the language. It felt like a whole new world. She had studied English for years, but this was different. She was in the heart of an English-speaking country, and she was ready to dive in. As Selina stepped out into the cool, crisp air, she felt a sense of freedom. London was everything she had imagined and more. She was amazed by the grand buildings, the iconic red buses, and the constant hum of activity. But most of all, she was excited about the opportunity to practice her English with native speakers. This city, with all its history and culture, was going to be her classroom. That afternoon, after settling into her small apartment, Selina decided to explore the city. She hopped onto a train to visit a few iconic spots, eager to familiarize herself with the streets of London. The train was packed with people, and as she found a seat, she noticed two women sitting across from her. They were speaking English, of course, but it was fast, and the words blurred together. Selina tried to follow their conversation, but it was difficult. She understood some of what they said, but there were so many words she didn't recognize. It was frustrating, but she pushed through, reminding herself that this was why she was here. This was the immersion she needed. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, Selina decided to try speaking to them. She took a deep breath and spoke up in the simplest English she could muster. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm trying to learn English. Can I talk to you?" The two women looked at her, smiling warmly. One of them nodded and said, "Of course. Where are you from?" Selina's nerves melted away as the conversation began. She was speaking with native speakers, just as she had dreamed. They were kind and patient, helping her when she stumbled over words or struggled with pronunciation. They told her they were from England, visiting London for a conference. Their words were slow and clear, and Selina appreciated the way they made sure she understood. It wasn't just about teaching English. It was about encouraging someone to keep trying, no matter how hard it seemed. As the train journey continued, Selina felt a sense of pride. Despite her initial nervousness, she was holding a conversation in English with two native speakers. It was only a short interaction, lasting about 10 minutes, but it meant the world to her. The women gave her their contact details and invited her to visit them anytime she was in the area. It was an unexpected act of kindness, and it left Selina feeling empowered. The train ride came to an end, and Selina stepped off at her station, her heart full of new energy. She felt more determined than ever to improve her English. She wasn't going to let the challenges discourage her. Instead, she would embrace every moment, every conversation, every new word. This was the beginning of her journey, and it was only just starting. Back at her apartment, Selina pulled out her notebook and made a list of the new words she had learned during that brief conversation. She knew that the path to fluency wouldn't be easy, but moments like this reminded her why she was here. London was her classroom, and she was ready to learn. This was the start of a life-changing adventure. The city around her, with all its complexities and opportunities, was her teacher. The people, with their diverse accents and expressions, were her classmates. Selina knew that every day in London would be an opportunity to grow, to improve, and to get closer to her goal of speaking English fluently. Chapter 2: Starting Language Lessons. The following Monday, after settling into her new life in London, Selina was ready to take the next big step toward improving her English. Attending her first language lesson at the English school she had enrolled in. She had been looking forward to this day for weeks. She had made the decision to take her language learning seriously, and now she was here, about to start. The morning air was crisp as Selina walked through the bustling streets of London. The city seemed even more alive than it had the day before, and the mix of accents and languages swirling around her only added to the excitement. She felt a bit nervous. After all, this was her first real class in an English-speaking country. But at the same time, she couldn't wait to begin. When she arrived at the school, she was greeted by a warm receptionist who directed her to the classroom. The walls of the school were adorned with posters showcasing the diversity of the students, many of whom were from all over the world. Selina couldn't help but smile as she thought about the global community she was now a part of. She walked into the classroom, her heart racing slightly as she took in the sight of her new classmates. There were about 10 students, all sitting at desks arranged in a circle. Some of them seemed confident, while others, like her, looked a bit apprehensive. Everyone was there for the same reason: to improve their English. The teacher, a kind and energetic woman, introduced herself as Mrs. Thompson. She had a warm smile that immediately put Selina at ease. Mrs. Thompson welcomed everyone and began the lesson by asking each student to introduce themselves. "Let's go around the room," she said. "Tell us your name, where you're from, and why you want to learn English." As Selina listened to the other students, she noticed that they came from all corners of the world. There was Carlos from Spain, May from China, and Anna from Brazil. Each student spoke about their reasons for learning English, whether it was for work, travel, or simply a personal goal. When it was Selina's turn, she took a deep breath and said, "Hi, I'm Selina, and I'm from the United States. I've been learning English for a while, but I want to improve my speaking and listening skills, especially in real-world situations." Mrs. Thompson nodded with understanding. "That's great, Selina, and I think you'll find that this class will help you do just that. In this school, we believe in an interactive approach to learning. It's not about memorizing textbooks. It's about using English in real, meaningful ways." Selina felt a surge of hope. That's exactly what she wanted. She had always struggled with textbooks and grammar drills, finding them dry and difficult to retain. But now, she was in a class that valued practical use of the language. The class began with a discussion on the importance of speaking English every day. Mrs. Thompson explained that learning a language wasn't just about knowing vocabulary or grammar rules. It was about being able to communicate effectively, to express ideas and understand others. She emphasized that the more a student spoke, the better they would get at it. "Don't worry about making mistakes," Mrs. Thompson said with a reassuring smile. "Making mistakes is part of the process. The important thing is that you keep practicing and using the language." Selina was relieved to hear this. She had always been afraid of speaking because she didn't want to sound silly or make errors. But Mrs. Thompson's words made her realize that mistakes were a natural part of learning. She could finally let go of that fear. The lesson continued with various speaking exercises. Selina was paired with May, the student from China. At first, Selina felt a bit nervous. May seemed so confident in her English. But as they began their conversation, May's kind and patient nature helped Selina feel more at ease. They talked about their hobbies, their countries, and their reasons for learning English. Although Selina stumbled over a few words, May was understanding and encouraging. By the end of the class, Selina felt more comfortable speaking than she had before. It was clear to her that this class wasn't just about memorizing words, it was about immersing herself in the language, speaking it, and using it to connect with others. Before the lesson ended, Mrs. Thompson shared her approach to language learning. In our class, we focus on a few key principles, she said. First, don't focus too much on perfection. Just focus on communication. Second, practice every day. It doesn't have to be long, but consistency is key. And third, use English in real-life situations as much as you can. Speak with people, listen to English, and read as much as possible. Selina couldn't agree more. She had always felt that textbooks and grammar exercises were not enough for her. She needed a more hands-on approach, and this class was exactly what she needed. As the class wrapped up, Mrs. Thompson handed out a simple homework assignment. For tomorrow, I want you to speak English for 15 minutes every day, she said. It can be with a friend, a colleague, or even by yourself. Just speak. And remember, the goal isn't to be perfect, it's to practice. Selina left the classroom feeling a sense of excitement and determination. She had taken the first step towards her goal, and she was already beginning to feel a shift in her mindset. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was clear to her. Now that with the right approach, she could do this. As she walked back to her apartment, Selina reflected on what she had learned in just a single lesson. She had come to London with the hope of improving her English, but now she realized that it wasn't just about mastering the language. It was about embracing the process, making mistakes, and learning every single day. That night, Selina sat down with her notebook and jotted down the key points from the lesson. She was ready for whatever the next class would bring. She knew that the road ahead would be full of challenges, but she was more determined than ever to succeed. Chapter 3: Building Vocabulary. The following week, Selina was excited to return to school. Her first lesson had left her feeling motivated, and now she was ready to dive deeper into learning English, particularly focusing on one of the most crucial aspects of mastering a new language: building vocabulary. When Selina arrived at class on Tuesday, she felt a bit more confident. She had been practicing her English every day, speaking to strangers, listening to podcasts, and reading simple articles. She could already feel a difference in her ability to understand English conversations, but she knew that expanding her vocabulary was going to be the key to truly unlocking fluency. As she entered the classroom, Mrs. Thompson greeted everyone with her usual warm smile. Today's lesson was all about vocabulary, the building blocks of language. Mrs. Thompson began the class by asking everyone, "What do you think is the best way to learn new words in English?" Selina listened carefully as her classmates shared their thoughts. Some said that they preferred to memorize vocabulary lists. Others mentioned flashcards, or even trying to remember the words through repetition. Mrs. Thompson nodded, acknowledging each response before offering her own perspective. "There's no one-size-fits-all method," she said, "but I believe the best way to learn new words is through context, learning words as part of sentences rather than in isolation." Selina thought about this. She had always tried to memorize lists of words from textbooks, and though she recognized many words, she often struggled to recall them in conversation. She realized that just memorizing words without understanding how they fit into sentences might not be the most effective strategy. Mrs. Thompson continued, "When you learn a new word, it's not just about knowing what the word means. It's about knowing how that word works in different contexts, how it's used in sentences, in conversation, and in real-life situations." Selina nodded, beginning to see the bigger picture. It wasn't just about the word itself. It was about the connections between words and how they function together. To truly know a word, she would need to see it in context, understand its usage, and practice it in different scenarios. As part of the lesson, Mrs. Thompson handed out a reading passage to the class. It was a short article about a trip to the countryside, describing the landscape, the weather, and the activities one could do there. Mrs. Thompson asked the students to read the article aloud, one sentence at a time. Selina was paired with Carlos from Spain, and they took turns reading the passage. As they read, Mrs. Thompson encouraged the students to highlight any unfamiliar words. After each paragraph, she paused to discuss the new vocabulary. "What do you think serene means in this sentence?" she asked, pointing to the word in the passage. "How about vast?" Selina thought for a moment. "I think serene means calm or peaceful," she said. "Exactly," Mrs. Thompson replied. "And what about vast?" Carlos raised his hand. "I think it means huge or enormous," he said. "Right again." Mrs. Thompson smiled. "See how much easier it is to learn these words when you understand them in the context of a sentence?" Selina realized that this approach made learning vocabulary much more manageable. She didn't just need to memorize the definition of a word. She needed to understand how it was used in real situations. By reading texts and listening to conversations, she could see how words interacted with each other and built meaning. After the reading exercise, Mrs. Thompson gave the class another task. Each student was to write a short paragraph about their favorite place, using at least 5 of the new vocabulary words from the article. The goal was to use the words in sentences, ensuring that they understood the meaning and context. Selina thought about her favorite place, the beach in her hometown. She wrote, "My favorite place is the beach near my home. It's a serene spot with vast stretches of sand and calm turquoise water. The sound of the waves is peaceful, and the cool breeze makes me feel relaxed and happy." After writing, Selina shared her paragraph with the class. Mrs. Thompson praised her use of the vocabulary words. "Great job, Selina. You not only used the new words correctly, but also captured their meaning in the context of your own experience. This is how vocabulary sticks with you, by using it in ways that feel real." Selina smiled. She felt proud of herself. This approach was already making a difference. By focusing on how words worked together in sentences, she felt more confident in her ability to understand and remember them. She wasn't just learning words in isolation. She was learning them as tools to communicate ideas and express herself. Later, Mrs. Thompson introduced another useful technique for building vocabulary: reading aloud. She explained that when you read aloud, you are not only reinforcing your understanding of the words, but also improving your pronunciation and fluency. It's also a great way to practice new vocabulary, she said. When you read aloud, you get to hear the words and their correct usage, which helps you remember them better. Selina made a note in her book. Read aloud every day to improve vocabulary and pronunciation. She decided to make this part of her daily routine. Whether it was reading a news article, a short story, or even a few pages of a book, she was determined to make reading aloud a regular habit. As the lesson came to an end, Mrs. Thompson shared one final piece of advice. Remember, building vocabulary is a gradual process, she said. The key is consistency. Try to learn a few new words every day, and don't forget to use them in sentences. The more you use the words, the more natural they will become. Selina left the class that day feeling inspired and more equipped to continue her language learning journey. She now understood that vocabulary wasn't just about memorizing words, it was about using them. By practicing them in context, reading aloud, and incorporating them into real conversations, she could build a vocabulary that would help her communicate more effectively. Over the next few days, Selina began to apply what she had learned. She made it a point to read every day, to speak English whenever possible, and to pay close attention to new words and how they were used. She kept a small notebook where she wrote down new words she encountered and created sentences with them. It was exciting to see her vocabulary grow. Every day she felt more confident, more comfortable with the language. The path to fluency seemed clearer now, and Selina was more determined than ever to keep building her vocabulary. She knew that each new word she learned was another tool she could use to express herself in English, and that every small step brought her closer to her goal. Chapter 4: Improving Pronunciation. Selina's journey to learning English was progressing well, but there was one area she still struggled with: pronunciation. She could understand English, and she was becoming more confident with vocabulary. But when it came to speaking clearly and sounding natural, she found herself getting stuck. Sometimes she would mispronounce words, and it left her feeling unsure about her speaking abilities. She knew that improving her pronunciation was essential if she wanted to feel more comfortable in conversations. So, when she walked into class on Wednesday morning, she was eager to learn more about how to pronounce English words correctly. The day's lesson began like the others, with Mrs. Thompson greeting everyone warmly. "Today, we're going to focus on pronunciation," she said, smiling. "Pronunciation can be tricky, but don't worry. There are simple techniques that can help you improve." Selina felt a bit relieved. She had been worried that improving her pronunciation would be an overwhelming task. She hoped Mrs. Thompson would have some useful tips to make it easier. Mrs. Thompson started the class by explaining why many students have difficulty with pronunciation. "The problem is that when we speak, we use the muscles in our mouths and throats. But when you learn a new language, those muscles aren't used to producing the sounds of that language. Often, students end up using the muscle movements from their native language, which leads to mispronunciations." Selina listened closely. That made sense. She had noticed that when she spoke English, her mouth didn't feel quite the same as when she spoke her native language. The sounds were different, and her muscles had to adjust to produce those sounds. "The good news," Mrs. Thompson continued, "is that with practice, you can train your mouth to pronounce English sounds correctly. It takes time, but you can get better." Selina felt encouraged. Mrs. Thompson's words gave her hope that with consistent effort, she could overcome her pronunciation difficulties. "Now," Mrs. Thompson said, I'm going to teach you a technique that has helped many students improve their pronunciation. It's called shadowing. Selina raised her eyebrow. Shadowing? She thought. She wasn't familiar with that technique. Mrs. Thompson smiled, seeing the confusion on some of the students' faces. Shadowing is a very simple technique. All you have to do is listen to a recording in English, like a video or audio, and repeat what you hear, exactly as you hear it. Try to mimic the sounds, the rhythm, and the intonation of the speaker. It's like you're shadowing them. Selina was intrigued. She had heard of language learners practicing by repeating after native speakers, but she had never considered it a formal technique. Mrs. Thompson continued, "This technique helps you get used to the way English sounds. You'll begin to understand the natural flow of the language and how to produce those sounds yourself." The class then practiced shadowing. Mrs. Thompson played a short video with a native English speaker talking about a trip to the mountains. The speaker had a clear and steady pace, which made it easier for the students to follow. "Listen carefully," Mrs. Thompson instructed. "Repeat exactly what you hear, paying attention to the sounds, the stress of the words, and how the speaker pronounces certain phrases. Don't worry about understanding everything right now. Just focus on mimicking the sounds." Selina watched the video carefully, and as soon as the speaker began talking, she repeated the words aloud, matching the rhythm and tone as closely as possible. At first, it felt a bit awkward. She wasn't used to listening so intently and repeating the words immediately. But as she continued, it became easier. She could hear the way the speaker was stressing certain words, and she began to feel more connected to the sounds of the language. After a few minutes, Mrs. Thompson paused the video and asked the class to reflect on how they felt. "How did it go?" she asked. "I felt a bit strange at first," Selina admitted. "But as I repeated the words, I started to get a better feel for the rhythm of the language. It felt good." "That's great, Selina," Mrs. Thompson smiled. "The key with shadowing is to practice it regularly. The more you do it, the more natural it will feel, and you'll see improvements in your pronunciation and fluency." Selina was excited. She had finally found a technique that felt both practical and effective. Shadowing allowed her to practice speaking in real time and made it easier for her to understand how to produce the sounds she was hearing. She knew this would be a powerful tool to help her improve her pronunciation. As the lesson continued, Mrs. Thompson shared another useful tip for improving pronunciation: thinking aloud. This technique is simple, but it's incredibly effective, she said. When you're learning a new language, you should practice speaking your thoughts out loud. This will help you become more comfortable with forming sentences in your new language. Selina was a bit curious. Thinking aloud? But I don't always know what to say in English, she thought. Mrs. Thompson explained, You don't have to have a full conversation with yourself. Just practice speaking the thoughts that come to your mind. For example, if you're walking down the street, you might think, The weather is nice today. Or, I wonder if I'll have time to go shopping later. Just say those thoughts out loud, even if it feels a bit strange. Selina decided to give it a try. She walked home from class thinking aloud in English. The weather is sunny, she said to herself. I'm going to make dinner tonight. Maybe I'll try that recipe I saw last week. At first it felt odd, but the more she did it, the easier it became. Thinking aloud in English helped her become more comfortable with the language. She wasn't focusing on making every sentence perfect, but rather on practicing forming thoughts in English. As she did more shadowing and thinking aloud, Selina's confidence grew. She could hear herself improving, and the awkwardness of speaking in English slowly faded away. She began to feel more connected to the language and more comfortable making mistakes along the way. By the end of the week, Selina had practiced shadowing and thinking aloud every day. She could already hear a noticeable improvement in her pronunciation. She felt more confident in conversations, even if she didn't know every word. Her speaking was becoming smoother, and the fear of mispronouncing words was starting to diminish. 1. Day after class, Selina spoke to Mrs. Thompson about her progress. I think shadowing and thinking aloud are really helping me, she said. I can feel that my pronunciation is getting better, and I'm not as nervous to speak anymore. Mrs. Thompson smiled proudly. That's exactly what we want. Keep practicing, and you'll continue to improve. Just remember, pronunciation is a process, and it takes time. The more you practice, the more natural it will become. Selina left the school that day with a sense of accomplishment. She knew there was still a long way to go, but she was no longer afraid of speaking. She had the tools she needed: shadowing, thinking aloud, and a growing confidence in her abilities. The road ahead might be challenging, but she was ready to continue her journey of learning English, one word, one sentence, and one pronunciation at a time. Chapter 5. Overcoming Grammar Worries. By the time Selina reached her 4th week in London, she had made significant progress in her English learning journey. Her vocabulary was expanding, her pronunciation was improving, and she was becoming more confident when speaking with others. But there was still one area that she couldn't shake off: grammar. She had always found grammar to be a struggle. The rules, the exceptions, the different tenses. It all seemed so complicated and overwhelming. At times, it felt like the more she learned, the more mistakes she made. Selina often caught herself doubting her skills. How can I speak fluently if I don't understand grammar perfectly? She would ask herself. One day, Selina's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed that Selina seemed particularly stressed during their class. They were practicing some basic sentence structures, and although Selina was participating actively, she wasn't her usual confident self. Mrs. Thompson, always perceptive, gently approached Selina after the lesson ended. "Is everything okay, Selina?" Mrs. Thompson asked, a kind smile on her face. "I noticed you seemed a bit anxious during today's class. Is something bothering you?" Selina hesitated for a moment, but then opened up. "I'm struggling with grammar," she admitted. "I keep making mistakes and I feel like it's holding me back. I know that grammar is important, but I just don't know how to get it right. It feels like I'll never be able to speak properly until I fully understand every grammar rule." Mrs. Thompson listened carefully, nodding as Selina spoke. "I understand," she said. "A lot of students feel that way. But let me tell you something important. Grammar is just one part of learning a language. It's important, yes, but it's not the only thing that matters. There's more to language than just rules." Selina was surprised. She had always thought that grammar was the key to mastering English, the foundation on which everything else was built. She looked at Mrs. Thompson, waiting for her to explain further. "Grammar is essential for understanding how sentences are constructed," Mrs. Thompson continued. "But let me ask you this. When you learned your native language, did you focus on grammar first?" Selina thought for a moment. "No," she said slowly. "I just picked up words, listened to people, and tried to use what I knew." "Exactly," Mrs. Thompson smiled. "When you were a child, you learned your native language without consciously thinking about grammar. You learned it through listening, speaking, and being immersed in real conversations. The same goes for learning English. Grammar is something that improves with practice, but it shouldn't hold you back from speaking. You don't have to be perfect. Perfection comes with time, not from stressing over every rule." Selina felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Mrs. Thompson's words were comforting, and they made sense. She realized that while grammar was important, It shouldn't be her main focus when trying to speak and understand English. There were other ways to learn grammar naturally, ways that didn't involve endless memorization and frustration. Mrs. Thompson continued, I want to share something with you. You don't have to worry about grammar all the time. The best way to learn grammar is through exposure, by reading, listening, and speaking as much as possible. The more you use English in real situations, the more you'll internalize the grammar naturally. Over time, you'll notice that you start using correct grammar without even thinking about it. Selina's eyes lit up. She had always struggled with memorizing grammar rules from textbooks, and now she understood why it hadn't worked. It wasn't about memorizing. It was about immersing herself in the language. Do you remember the shadowing technique we practiced? Mrs. Thompson asked. Well, that's an excellent way to improve grammar, too. When you repeat what you hear, you're naturally practicing sentence structures, tenses, and word order. And by reading a lot, you'll start to see grammar in context. That's how you'll improve. Selina nodded enthusiastically. She had already noticed that the more she practiced speaking and listening, the easier it became to put sentences together. But now, she understood that grammar was not a separate entity. It was a part of the whole, language experience, something that would come with time and practice. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes, Mrs. Thompson said, her voice gentle but firm. You're learning, and mistakes are part of the process. As long as you keep practicing, you'll improve, and your grammar will become more accurate naturally. Selina smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I feel better now. I realize I've been putting too much pressure on myself. I'll focus more on speaking and listening and not worry too much about getting every grammar rule right. Mrs. Thompson gave her a reassuring nod. That's the spirit. And if you ever feel unsure about something, don't hesitate to ask. We'll work through it together. Grammar is important, but the most important thing is to keep practicing and communicating. Once you start using the language in real-life situations, everything else will fall into place. The next day, Selina went home with a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to make grammar a more natural part of her learning, rather than something she had to study obsessively. She committed to reading more books, watching English movies, and having more conversations, even if she made mistakes. She wasn't going to let grammar hold her back anymore. As she continued her daily practice, Selina realized that Mrs. Thompson was right. The more she used English, the more her grammar improved without her even trying. Her conversations became smoother, and although she still made mistakes, they weren't as frequent. She was learning naturally, just as she had learned her native language. A few weeks later, during a class discussion, Selina felt proud of how far she had come. She could express herself with more confidence, and she noticed that her grammar was improving on its own. She no longer feared making mistakes or getting things wrong. At the end of the lesson, Mrs. Thompson called on Selina to share her thoughts. "How do you feel now about grammar, Selina?" she asked. Selina smiled brightly. "I feel so much more confident. I don't feel like I have to be perfect anymore. I just focus on using English every day, and it's helping my grammar get better on its own." Mrs. Thompson beamed. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Keep practicing, Selina. You're doing great. And remember, language learning is a journey, not a race. Take your time and enjoy the process." Selina left class that day feeling empowered. She had finally found a healthy approach to grammar. Instead of fearing it, she was embracing it as part of the natural learning process. And with every conversation, every book, and every moment of practice, she knew she was getting closer to mastering English. Not through perfection, but through consistent use and a love for the language. Chapter 6: Exploring the Job Market. By the time Selina had spent several weeks in London, her English was improving steadily. She was feeling more confident in her speaking, understanding, and vocabulary, but there was still something else she wanted to accomplish during her time in this vibrant city. She wanted to find a job. Not just any job, but one where she could immerse herself even further in the language, using it in real-life situations every day. Selina had always been a hard worker, and she knew that getting a job in an English-speaking country would help her not only practice the language, but also give her the opportunity to learn more about British culture. It would also be a chance to meet new people, make friends, and boost her confidence in using English in a professional environment. So she began to look into job opportunities. One afternoon, after a particularly engaging English class, Selina decided to take action. Mrs. Thompson had mentioned in class that London was filled with opportunities for students looking for part-time work, especially in the hospitality industry. Selina thought it sounded like a great way to start. She had always enjoyed working with people and thought that a job where she could interact with customers would give her valuable speaking practice. She sat down in the student lounge after class and began browsing job listings on her laptop. As she scrolled through the postings, Selina saw positions for waitstaff in cafes and restaurants, cleaners, receptionists, and sales assistants. They all seemed like good opportunities to improve her English and learn more about British work culture. One listing caught her eye: a part-time barista at a local cafe. Selina had worked in a coffee shop back home, and she loved the idea of learning how to make British coffee drinks and interact with customers in English. The position required some previous experience, but the job description noted that training would be provided. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for Selina. Without hesitation, she clicked on the application button and began filling out her details. She was a bit nervous, but she knew this was a step in the right direction. After submitting her resume, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. What if they didn't call her back? What if her English wasn't good enough for a job like this? That evening, she told her flatmate, Emily, about her application. Emily, who had been living in London for a few months, encouraged Selina to keep looking and assured her that she would do great. A lot of people have to start with basic jobs when they move to a new country, Emily said. You'll pick up English so much faster when you're speaking it every day, especially in a busy place like a cafe. Selina appreciated the advice, but she still couldn't shake off the feeling that her language skills weren't quite up to par. What if she didn't understand the customers? Or worse, what if she couldn't communicate clearly with her colleagues? The next day, Selina decided to take the next step. She had heard that there was a job center nearby where students could find job listings, so she decided to check it out. When she arrived, the job center was busy with students and locals looking for employment. The walls were lined with pamphlets and flyers about available positions in various industries. At the front desk, Selina spoke to a friendly woman who offered to help her look through the listings. "What kind of work are you looking for?" the woman asked. "I'm hoping to find something in a cafe or restaurant," Selina explained. "I think it would be a good way to practice English while working." The woman nodded. "That's a great choice. London has lots of opportunities in that area, especially for students. You can find part-time work with flexible hours. Let me show you a few places that are hiring." The woman handed Selina a list of nearby cafes and restaurants that were looking for part-time workers. Selina was relieved to see that many of the positions were entry-level and did not require fluent English. She felt more confident now. Perhaps she wasn't as far behind in her language skills as she had initially thought. Before leaving the job center, the woman gave Selina some additional advice. "A lot of these places are looking for people with good customer service skills," she said. "If you're friendly and eager to learn, they'll appreciate that. Don't worry too much about grammar. Focus on communication and being helpful. That's what matters most in a job like this." Selina left the job center feeling more optimistic. She realized that her English didn't need to be perfect to get a job. What was important was her willingness to learn and engage with others. As she walked back to her flat, she decided to apply to a few more places, feeling confident that she had the right mindset. Later that week, Selina received an email from the cafe she had applied to. They invited her for an interview. Excited but nervous, she prepared for the interview by reviewing some common questions she might be asked, such as, "Why do you want to work here?" And "What experience do you have in customer service?" She also practiced answering questions in English to make sure she felt confident and clear. On the day of the interview, Selina wore her best professional outfit and took a deep breath before walking into the cafe. The manager greeted her with a warm smile and invited her to sit down. The interview was conducted in English, but Selina found that she could understand most of the questions. There were a few moments when she had to ask for clarification, but the manager was patient and willing to repeat herself. "I see you've worked in a coffee shop before," the manager said, looking at Selina's resume. "What kind of experience do you have making coffee?" Selina smiled, feeling relieved. "I worked at a cafe in the U.S. as a barista," she explained. "I made coffee, served customers, and helped with cleaning. I'm excited to learn more about how things are done here in London." The manager nodded. "That's great. We'll provide training, so don't worry about that. We're looking for someone who's friendly, reliable, and eager to learn. I can see that you're both of those things, so I think you'll be a great fit for the team." Selina's heart raced as she listened. She had prepared for this moment, but she didn't expect the interview to go so smoothly. By the end of the conversation, the manager smiled and said, "I'm happy to offer you the job. Welcome to the team." Selina could hardly believe it. She had done it. She had landed her first job in London. The feeling of excitement was overwhelming. Not only was she going to be able to work and earn money, but this job would give her the perfect opportunity to practice her English every day. She couldn't wait to start. In the following days, Selina began her training at the cafe. She learned how to make a variety of drinks, handle cash, and interact with customers. She was nervous at first, but the team was incredibly supportive, and her English improved with every interaction. She made small talk with customers, asked questions when she didn't understand something, and was never afraid to ask her colleagues for help. Selina quickly realized that working in an English-speaking environment was the best decision she could have made. Her vocabulary grew, her confidence increased, and she felt more and more comfortable using English in everyday situations. She was learning new phrases, understanding different accents, and practicing her speaking skills on a daily basis. And although the job was sometimes challenging, Especially when things got busy, Selina felt proud of herself. She was not only building her English skills, but also gaining real-world experience that would be valuable for her future career. Looking back on her decision to explore the job market, Selina knew that it had been one of the best choices she could have made. Not only had she found a job that helped her learn English, but she had also gained a sense of independence and a deeper connection to the city of London. Chapter 7: Developing Fluency in Speaking. After a few months in London, Selina had made remarkable progress in her English learning journey. Her vocabulary was growing steadily, her pronunciation was becoming more natural, and she had started to feel more comfortable speaking with others. But there was one area that Selina still found challenging: fluency. She could understand English well, and she had learned how to express herself with a fair amount of clarity. But when it came to speaking smoothly and quickly, especially in conversations with native speakers, she still felt like she was taking too long to find the right words. There were pauses, stumbles, and moments where she wasn't sure how to respond, and it frustrated her. Selina knew that fluency was the key to feeling truly confident in her ability to communicate. She wanted to speak like a native, to converse without thinking too much about grammar or vocabulary. She had made a lot of progress, but there was still one thing missing: the ability to speak fluidly and effortlessly. One afternoon, Selina sat in her favorite cafe after work, sipping a cappuccino and reflecting on how far she had come since her first day in London. She was proud of her achievements, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still holding her back. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily, her flatmate, who was also an English learner, but had been in London for much longer than Selina. "Hey, Selina, are you free to meet up tonight? I found a new language exchange group. It's a chance to practice English with native speakers and other learners. What do you think?" Selina's heart skipped a beat. This sounded like the perfect opportunity to improve her speaking skills. Emily had told her about language exchange groups before. Places where people meet to practice their language skills in a relaxed setting. Native speakers of English could help her with fluency, and she could return the favor by helping them practice her native language. It sounded like a great way to break through her speaking barrier. Without hesitating, Selina replied, "Yes, I'm in. Let's meet up." That evening, Selina arrived at the cafe where the language exchange group was meeting. It was a cozy, vibrant place filled with people chatting and laughing. There were a few tables set up, each with a group of people speaking different languages. Selina quickly spotted Emily, who was waving her over. "Over here, Selina," Emily called out. Selina made her way to the table where Emily was sitting with two native English speakers, Mark and Sarah. They were both friendly and welcoming, and after some introductions, the group began their first conversation. "We're here to practice speaking English," Mark explained. "So let's just talk about anything that comes to mind. No pressure. The goal is to just speak, relax, and have a conversation." Selina felt a bit nervous at first. She had been practicing English in many settings, but this was her first time speaking with a group of native speakers in an informal setting. She wasn't sure if she would be able to keep up or if her sentences would come out perfectly. But as the conversation started, something surprising happened. It wasn't as hard as she had imagined. They started talking about hobbies. Mark mentioned that he loved hiking, Sarah shared her passion for painting, and Emily talked about her love of cooking. Selina listened carefully, trying to pick up on new phrases and words that she could use in her own sentences. When it was her turn to speak, Selina took a deep breath. "I like reading books and watching movies," she said. "I also enjoy going to the park. I think it's a good way to relax." It wasn't a perfect sentence, but the group nodded and smiled. "That sounds great, Selina," Sarah said. "What kind of books do you like to read?" Selina felt a bit more confident now. "I like fiction, especially mystery novels. I like stories that make me think. What about you?" As the conversation continued, Selina found herself speaking more easily. She wasn't worrying so much about getting every word right. She was just focusing on getting her ideas across, even if they weren't perfectly formed. The more she spoke, the more comfortable she became. After a while, Sarah pointed out something that Selina hadn't noticed about herself. "You're doing really well, Selina. You're not pausing as much, and your sentences are flowing more naturally. You're developing a great rhythm." Selina smiled, feeling proud. She realized that the secret to fluency wasn't necessarily about being perfect. It was about getting comfortable with speaking, practicing consistently, and not being afraid to make mistakes. She had always been so focused on perfecting her grammar, but tonight, in this conversation, she had learned something important. Fluency comes when you stop worrying about perfection and just enjoy the conversation. The next few weeks were transformative for Selina. She made it a point to join the language exchange group every week, and each time, her fluency improved. She began to speak more confidently and with fewer pauses. Her vocabulary expanded as she learned new phrases and expressions from the native speakers in the group. Slowly but surely, her speaking felt more fluid and less forced. One evening, after a particularly lively discussion about travel, Mark pulled Selina aside. "You've made a lot of progress, Selina," he said with a grin. "Your English is much smoother now. You're speaking with much more confidence." Selina beamed. "Thank you. I've been working on it, and I think these language exchange sessions have really helped." "It's all about practice," Mark said, "and you're doing great. The more you speak, the easier it gets. Just keep doing what you're doing." Selina walked home that evening with a huge smile on her face. She felt like a different person. A few months ago, she had been so shy about speaking English. But now, after countless conversations, a lot of practice, and a little bit of courage, she was beginning to speak fluently. One thing she had learned along the way was that fluency wasn't a destination. It was a continuous process. The more she practiced, the more natural it became. Selina also realized that the key to fluency was not to overthink. As soon as she stopped focusing so much on grammar and pronunciation, she could actually engage in conversations more freely. She learned that fluency came with time, practice, and exposure. In the following months, Selina continued to seek out opportunities to speak English as much as possible. She joined conversation clubs, made friends with native speakers, and even found a language partner who she would meet with once a week to practice speaking. Her English was no longer something she had to force. It had become a part of her. Her job at the cafe also gave her plenty of opportunities to speak English daily, and she took full advantage of that. She made small talk with customers, participated in conversations with her colleagues, and learned more about British culture and expressions along the way. Every day was another chance to improve, and Selina embraced it all with enthusiasm. By the time her 6 months in London were coming to an end, Selina looked back and was amazed at how much she had achieved. She had gone from being hesitant and unsure of herself to speaking English confidently and fluently. She could hold conversations without feeling self-conscious, and her ability to express herself was clearer than ever. As Selina boarded the plane back to her home country, she reflected on her journey. She was proud of the progress she had made, and more importantly, she realized that fluency wasn't just about speaking fast. It was about being able to express yourself clearly and confidently, no matter what the situation. And that, she knew, was something she could continue to build upon for the rest of her life. Chapter 8. Learning to Handle Mistakes. As the months passed in London, Selina's English was improving more than she could have imagined. She had become more confident in speaking, and her vocabulary was expanding. She was participating actively in conversations with her colleagues at the cafe, attending weekly language exchange meetups, and even engaging in casual conversations with strangers. She felt proud of how far she had come, but there was still one challenge that she hadn't quite mastered: handling mistakes. No matter how much she practiced, Selina still found herself making mistakes when speaking English. Sometimes it was a small mispronunciation. Other times it was a grammar mistake, or even using the wrong word in a sentence. Each time it happened, she felt a brief wave of embarrassment. She would often think, "What if they think I'm not good enough?" Or, "Why can't I speak perfectly yet?" Selina had always been a perfectionist, and she had a habit of being hard on herself. She wanted to be fluent, and the idea of making mistakes seemed to be a major obstacle in her mind. She was afraid that her mistakes would affect how others saw her, or that they would prevent her from improving. One evening, after a long shift at the cafe, Selina sat down to relax with a cup of tea. As she scrolled through her phone, she saw a message from Emily, her flatmate, who had become one of her closest friends in London. "Hey, Selina," the message started. "I was just thinking about something that came up in our language exchange group the other night. We were talking about how important it is to make mistakes when learning a language. The more mistakes we make, the better we get at speaking. I know you're doing great, but don't forget, mistakes are part of the process. Let me know. What you think?" Selina read the message again, and for the first time, something clicked. Mistakes were part of the learning process, not something to fear. She had heard this advice before, but for some reason it didn't really sink in until now. Emily was right. Making mistakes wasn't a failure. It was an essential part of growing and improving. The next day, Selina's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed that Selina was looking a bit frustrated during class. They were working on forming complex sentences, and Selina had stumbled over a few words. Mrs. Thompson approached her after the lesson and asked, "Selina, is everything okay? You seemed a little tense today." Selina hesitated for a moment, then admitted, "I keep making mistakes, and I don't know how to handle it. I'm worried that my mistakes are holding me back. I want to speak perfectly, but it feels like I'm still not good enough." Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Ah, I see. You know, I hear this from a lot of my students. But let me tell you something important. Mistakes are not something to be ashamed of. They are the stepping stones to improvement. The more mistakes you make, the more you're learning." Selina raised an eyebrow, unsure. "But doesn't it mean I'm failing if I keep making mistakes?" "Not at all," Mrs. Thompson replied, her voice calm and reassuring. "When you make a mistake, it means you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. It means you're trying. And trying is the key to progress. You can't expect to be perfect from the start. Mistakes are a sign of growth. Selina thought about this for a moment. Mrs. Thompson was right. She had been so focused on speaking perfectly that she hadn't allowed herself to make mistakes without feeling like a failure. She realized that in her desire to speak fluently, she had been avoiding opportunities to speak freely, fearing that every mistake would set her back. "Do you remember when you first arrived in London?" Mrs. Thompson asked. "At the beginning, you were afraid to speak because you didn't want to make mistakes. But look at you now. You've made so much progress. That's because you allowed yourself to make mistakes along the way. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be speaking as confidently as you are today." Selina smiled, feeling a sense of relief. Mrs. Thompson was right. She had come a long way since her first days in London. She had made countless mistakes, but those mistakes had led her to the level of English she had now. She began to realize that mistakes were not failures. They were simply steps toward improvement. As the days went by, Selina started to change her perspective. She began to embrace her mistakes as learning opportunities rather than setbacks. When she mispronounced a word or used the wrong tense, instead of feeling embarrassed, she would laugh it off and move forward. The key was to not let mistakes hold her back. One day at the cafe, Selina was taking an order from a customer when she accidentally mixed up the words latte and cappuccino. She felt her face turn red as the customer politely corrected her, but instead of getting upset, she quickly apologized and laughed. "Oops! Looks like I need more practice. Thank you for pointing that out," she said, and the customer smiled in response. Later, Selina's colleague, Kate, overheard the interaction and gave her some encouraging words. "Don't worry about it, Selina. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that you keep trying. The more you speak, the better you'll get." Selina nodded, feeling a sense of relief. She had learned that mistakes didn't define her ability to speak English. It was how she handled those mistakes that mattered most. One evening, Selina was walking home after a language exchange session when she encountered a man who was lost. He asked her for directions, but as he spoke, Selina could barely understand his heavy accent. She hesitated for a moment, trying to figure out what he was asking. Then, instead of getting flustered, she decided to ask him to repeat himself. "Sorry, could you say that again?" "I didn't quite catch it," she said, feeling a little embarrassed but also determined to help. The man smiled and repeated his question, and this time, Selina understood him clearly. She confidently gave him directions, and he thanked her before walking away. As Selina continued walking, she realized that in the past, she would have been too embarrassed to ask for clarification. She would have tried to power through, pretending that she understood. But now, she was okay with not having all the answers. She realized that asking for help and admitting mistakes were just part of the learning process. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being willing to learn. The next week in class, Mrs. Thompson asked the students to reflect on how they were handling mistakes in their English learning. "How are you all doing?" she asked. "Do you still feel frustrated when you make a mistake, or have you learned to see them as opportunities?" Selina raised her hand. "I've learned that mistakes are a natural part of the process. At first, I used to be afraid of them, but now I see them as opportunities to improve. If I don't make mistakes, I'm not really learning." Mrs. Thompson smiled proudly. "Exactly. Mistakes are not the enemy. They're our friends in language learning. They show us where we need to grow and help us become better at communicating." Selina left class that day feeling empowered. She knew that as long as she kept making mistakes and learning from them, she was moving in the right direction. The fear of mistakes had faded away, replaced by the understanding that every mistake was a lesson. Over time, Selina became more comfortable speaking English, knowing that mistakes were simply part of the journey. Her fluency improved, not because she had avoided mistakes, but because she had embraced them and used them to become a better, more confident speaker. Chapter 9: Shadowing and Thinking Aloud. By the time Selina reached her 8th week in London, she had become more comfortable with speaking English. But she knew there was still room for improvement, especially when it came to fluency and natural-sounding speech. She had mastered many techniques to improve her English, but there were two techniques that she had heard a lot about: shadowing and thinking aloud. She was curious to try them, but she hadn't yet fully committed to using them in her daily practice. One evening, after a long shift at the cafe, Selina sat down with her journal to reflect on her progress. She was proud of her achievements, but still felt like she could speak more smoothly and confidently. She remembered Mrs. Thompson's advice. To improve your speaking fluency, you need to practice every day. The key is to use the language constantly, through listening, speaking, and even thinking. Selina paused and thought about how she could take her practice to the next level. Shadowing and thinking aloud seemed like powerful techniques to help her do just that. Mrs. Thompson had mentioned them in passing, but Selina hadn't fully understood how they worked. It was time to dive deeper into these methods. The next day in class, Mrs. Thompson introduced the topic with a smile. Today, I want to teach you 2 techniques that will help you improve your speaking fluency and pronunciation: shadowing and thinking aloud. These are simple but very effective methods, and they can make a big difference if you practice them regularly. Selina leaned forward, eager to learn more. Mrs. Thompson continued, "Let's start with shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a recording or a video in English and then repeat exactly what you hear, trying to mimic the speaker's pronunciation, rhythm, intonation, and stress. It's like you're shadowing the speaker, trying to sound as close to them as possible." "Wait," Selina interrupted. "So it's not just about listening. We have to repeat right after them?" "Exactly," Mrs. Thompson confirmed. "It's an active listening exercise. When you shadow, you're not just hearing the words, you're actively practicing the sounds of the language. It helps your brain connect how words should sound in real conversation. And over time, it makes your speaking more natural." Selina nodded thoughtfully. She had done similar exercises in the past, but she'd never thought of them as a shadowing technique. The idea of mimicking a speaker's rhythm and intonation immediately made sense to her. It was about more than just memorizing vocabulary. It was about learning to sound like a native speaker. Mrs. Thompson played a short video of a native English speaker talking about their daily routine. "Let's try shadowing with this video," she said. "Listen carefully, then repeat after the speaker. Pay close attention to how they stress certain words and try to match their pace." The video began, and the speaker started talking about getting up in the morning, making coffee, and heading to work. Selina listened closely, and as the speaker finished a sentence, she repeated it, trying to match the tone and rhythm as accurately as she could. At first, she felt awkward, and the words didn't come out as smoothly as she had hoped. But she kept going, focusing on mimicking the speaker's voice and pace. After a few repetitions, Mrs. Thompson stopped the video and asked the class, "How did it feel? Did anyone notice any improvements?" Selina raised her hand. "It felt strange at first, but after a few tries, I started to get the rhythm. It made me more aware of how the sentences flow in English." "Great observation, Selina," Mrs. Thompson said. "Shadowing helps you not only with pronunciation, but also with the natural flow of the language. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll sound. So, make sure to shadow as much as you can, using videos, podcasts, or even conversations with people." Selina was excited. She knew that shadowing would be a powerful tool for improving her fluency. That evening, she decided to try shadowing on her own. She found a TED Talk online and chose a speaker she liked. As the speaker shared ideas on personal growth, Selina repeated each sentence, trying to mimic the speaker's tone, rhythm, and pauses. At first, it felt challenging, but with each sentence, Selina's confidence grew. The next day, Selina shared her experience with Emily. "I tried shadowing last night," Selina said, "and I think it really works. I could hear the difference in how I spoke. My pronunciation was clearer, and the sentences felt smoother." Emily smiled. "I told you. Shadowing is amazing for pronunciation and fluency. It helps you get used to how English sounds in real conversations." Selina agreed. She realized that the key to mastering the language wasn't just practicing isolated words or phrases. It was about learning to speak the way native speakers did, effortlessly. A few days later, Mrs. Thompson introduced the second technique, thinking aloud. The second technique I want to talk about is thinking aloud. This one might sound a little strange at first, but it's incredibly effective for improving fluency. The idea is simple. You speak your thoughts out loud, in English, even when you're alone. Selina was curious. "So, you just talk to yourself? In English?" "Yes," Mrs. Thompson smiled. "You don't need anyone to talk to. You just practice speaking your thoughts. It's a great way to get used to thinking in English and to start forming sentences without hesitating. At first, it might feel awkward, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes." Selina immediately thought about how often she found herself thinking in her native language. She realized that thinking in English was still a challenge, especially when she was alone or wasn't speaking with someone else. This technique sounded like just what she needed. That evening, as she walked home from class, Selina decided to give thinking aloud a try. As she strolled down the street, she started speaking her thoughts in English. "It's a beautiful day," she said, looking at the sky. "I'm glad I finished work early today. I should go to the park and enjoy the weather. I wonder what I should have for dinner. Maybe something healthy, salad or pasta." At first, it felt strange to be speaking out loud to herself, but as she continued, it became easier. Her thoughts started to flow more naturally in English, and she didn't have to pause as much to find the right words. The more she practiced, the more confident she felt about expressing herself in English without overthinking every sentence. Over the next few days, Selina made thinking aloud a part of her daily routine. She would speak her thoughts out loud while cooking, cleaning, or walking around the city. Gradually, she noticed a difference. Her English started to sound more fluid, and she was thinking in English without translating from her native language. She no longer felt the need to constantly search for the right words in her head. She was forming sentences more naturally. A week later, Selina noticed something incredible. Her fluency was improving. She could speak faster and more confidently in conversations. When someone asked her a question, she could respond without pausing too much. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes or feeling self-conscious. Her speaking felt more effortless, and it was all thanks to shadowing and thinking aloud. In class, Mrs. Thompson asked the students how their speaking had improved. Selina raised her hand eagerly. "I've been shadowing every day, and I've been thinking aloud too," she said. "I feel like my fluency is improving, and I'm not as afraid to speak anymore. It feels more natural." Mrs. Thompson beamed. "That's wonderful, Selina. Shadowing and thinking aloud are two of the best techniques for improving fluency. Keep practicing, and you'll continue to make progress. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become." Selina left class that day feeling motivated. She had learned that fluency didn't come from memorizing rules or vocabulary. It came from using the language, practicing every day, and getting comfortable with making mistakes along the way. Shadowing and thinking aloud had given her the tools she needed to become more confident in her speaking. As she continued her English learning journey, Selina knew that these techniques would be a key part of her routine. She wasn't just learning the language, she was living it every single day through speaking, thinking, and practicing. Chapter 10. Achieving English Mastery and Teaching Others. After months of dedication, practice, and immersion in London, Selina had transformed her English skills in ways she had never imagined possible. She had come a long way from the shy, hesitant beginner she once was, unsure of her ability to communicate in English. Now, Selina spoke with confidence and fluency, able to hold conversations on a wide range of topics without pausing to search for words. Her vocabulary was rich, her pronunciation was clear, and her grammar, though not perfect, was more than sufficient for effective communication. But as Selina continued to improve, she began to reflect on her journey. The progress she had made wasn't just about learning the language for herself. It was about understanding the power of communication, of sharing ideas and connecting with people. She realized that she wanted to share her knowledge with others, to teach them what she had learned, and help them achieve the same sense of confidence and mastery in English that she had worked so hard to attain. It was one of those moments of clarity when she knew what her next step would be: teaching English. It wasn't just a way to deepen her understanding of the language. It was a way to give back, to help others who were in the same position she had been in when she first arrived in London. She wanted to make a difference, to show others that learning English was not an impossible task, but a journey that anyone could take with patience, practice, and the right mindset. One evening, after finishing her shift at the cafe, Selina sat down with her journal, reflecting on the path ahead. She had already gained some teaching experience through informal conversations with friends and colleagues, helping them with their own English skills. But now she was thinking bigger. She wanted to teach in a more structured way, perhaps even become an English tutor for newcomers or international students. The next day, Selina spoke to Mrs. Thompson about her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Selina began, "and I want to teach English. I've learned so much from you and my own experience, and I feel ready to help others. But I'm not sure where to start." Mrs. Thompson smiled, clearly impressed by Selina's desire to teach. "That's wonderful, Selina. I think you'll make an excellent teacher. You've come so far, and your understanding of English is solid. Teaching others can deepen your own understanding of the language, too. Let me give you some advice on how to get started." Selina leaned forward, eager to hear more. "First, remember that teaching is not just about knowing the language. It's about being able to communicate that knowledge effectively," Mrs. Thompson explained. "You'll need to be patient, empathetic, and adaptable. Not all students learn the same way, and sometimes you'll need to find creative ways to explain concepts. But the most important thing is that you make your students feel confident. Show them that it's okay to make mistakes, and that learning is a process, not a race." Selina listened intently, absorbing every word. She had always been a patient person, and the experiences she had gained in London had taught her the value of persistence. Teaching would be a natural extension of her own journey, helping others navigate the same challenges she had faced. Mrs. Thompson continued, "Start by finding a few students who are at a similar level to where you were when you first started. You can offer informal lessons, helping them practice basic skills like vocabulary, pronunciation, and sentence structure. Don't worry about having all the answers at first. Just focus on helping your students use the language and become more confident." Selina left class that day with a renewed sense of purpose. She began researching local opportunities to tutor English, and within a week, she had found a few students who were eager to learn from her. She created a simple plan for her lessons, focusing on practical skills and using the techniques she had found most helpful during her own learning journey, such as shadowing, thinking aloud, and language immersion. Her first lesson was with a young man named Ali, who had recently moved to London from Pakistan. He wanted to improve his speaking skills and build his confidence in using English in everyday situations. As they sat down for their first session, Selina remembered Mrs. Thompson's advice. Be patient, empathetic, and adaptable. She greeted Ali warmly and asked him about his goals for learning English. Ali explained that he was struggling to understand native speakers, especially in conversations with his colleagues at work. Selina immediately recognized the challenge. She had faced the same difficulty when she first arrived in London. She assured him that she would help him overcome it, just as she had. I've learned that one of the best ways to improve speaking and listening is to practice every day, as much as possible, Selina said. One technique that really helped me is shadowing, listening to native speakers and repeating what they say. It helps with pronunciation, rhythm, and getting used to the flow of the language. Ali was a bit skeptical at first. But I can't always find native speakers to listen to, he said. Selina smiled. Don't worry. You can find plenty of online resources, podcasts, TED Talks, even TV shows. And I'll help you with shadowing during our lessons too. As the lesson progressed, Selina guided Ali through some shadowing exercises, focusing on short, everyday conversations. She encouraged him to repeat the sentences after her, mimicking her pronunciation and rhythm. At first, Ali hesitated, but as they continued, he became more comfortable. The more they practiced, the more his confidence grew. Selina also encouraged Ali to think aloud during their lessons. When you're practicing English on your own, try thinking in English instead of your native language. It will help you get used to forming sentences more naturally, she explained. Ali was initially unsure about talking to himself in English, but Selina assured him it would help him improve. Over time, he began to speak his thoughts aloud during their sessions, and soon he was thinking in English without even realizing it. By the end of their first few lessons, Ali had made noticeable progress. His pronunciation had improved, and he was speaking with more confidence. He even started to ask questions about words he didn't understand, something he had been hesitant to do before. Selina felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she watched Ali improve. She had been there herself, not so long ago, struggling to speak English with confidence. Now she was helping someone else navigate the same challenges. As her tutoring business grew, Selina began to take on more students. She found that teaching others deepened her own understanding of English. She learned to break down complex ideas into simple explanations and found new ways to help her students feel confident in their language learning journey. One day, after a particularly rewarding lesson, Selina sat down with Emily and shared her thoughts. "Teaching feels amazing," Selina said. "It's so rewarding to watch my students improve, and it helps me understand the language on a deeper level. I never thought I'd be here, helping others learn English, but now I feel like I've truly mastered it." Emily smiled. "I knew you'd be great at it. It's amazing how far you've come, and now you're passing it on to others. I'm so proud of you, Selina." Selina smiled back, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had started her journey to master English with a dream of speaking confidently, but now she had a new goal: to empower others to do the same. As Selina continued her journey as an English tutor, she realized that mastery wasn't just about knowing a language perfectly. It was about being able to share that knowledge with others and help them achieve their own goals. Every lesson, every student, was another opportunity to learn, grow, and make a difference. Selina knew that her journey wasn't over. There would always be more to learn, more students to teach, and more ways to improve. But as she stood in front of her students, teaching them the same skills that had helped her, she felt confident that she was on the right path. English mastery wasn't just a goal. It was a journey, one that she would continue to walk for the rest of her life, both as a learner and a teacher. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.